Hey, thank you for joining me again. I'm Dr. Aaron Murtis, and this is a description of how I put together the Journal of Life Care Planning. See the first video in this series for a little more explanation on that. But what this video is for is to try and talk about the preamble a little bit and some of the packages that I use, but I also want to give just an overall description of why I put it together the way that I did, because it's not the best system, it's probably not the most efficient, but here's what I got. So I'm really zoomed out, and it's going to be really hard to see this, but if you can see above this this line of stars right here, above that is the preamble. That's the stuff that's going to tell us how to format all of the documents that we have here. Below this is this section is just the table of contents page, because I couldn't find a good way to make our table of contents that fit our current formatting conventions. That was easier to do than this. So this is a little bit weird having this here. And then what I've done, instead of trying to put all the information in this one document, when an author sends something to me, I create a separate folder, a separate LaTeX document, and put all their content specific to their article in that. I have a separate BibTeX reference bibliography file. And I do that separately, but I'll get into that a little bit here. But that's what this stuff is down here. These are all the individual articles and the pages that I need to make the journal look the way I want it to. But let's start with the preamble. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can actually see what we're talking about here. One of the choices that I made as I decided that I wanted this to be an APA formatted journal, which kind of makes sense considering that's what it's always been, and those are the expectations of the reader. One of the things that I did is I wanted to use the APA7 package, because as of 2019, I think, APA7 is now the most current up-to-date version of APA formatting, and so I needed something that fit that. As it turns out, there's a document class that's already been written for this specific purpose. So all of the new spacing conventions and all of the new quoting conventions and all that stuff is built into this. And that was the primary reason why I wanted to use it. So if you're familiar with LaTeX, there's all kinds of different document classes, books, academics, articles, and that kind of stuff. APA7 meet the needs of what I wanted to do. We originally, this document class here allows for single column work. Originally, it used to be, I used the JOU or JOU, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but I used that one because I liked the double column format. And so I explored that one a little bit, but this is the final decision that I made based on what some of the other editorial team and what the journal has been in the past and the publisher and all that kind of stuff, what they thought would be the best for us. So that's what I chose to use. The package that I chose to use for combining these different PDFs. So essentially what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to compile each individual article into its own PDF and then bring all those PDFs together. So I can show you one of those individual articles in a little bit. But essentially that was a lot easier than making just one big long document. I ran into a whole bunch of problems of trying to figure out if I was going to use separate bibliographies for each individual article. And I just couldn't do that. Plus, every time I tried to sort of make the title page and have authors and their affiliations and all that stuff, by the next article I would do that again, and I would get all these errors saying, you can't do that because you already have an author identified in the previous article, something like that. So it didn't make sense for me to do this all in one document. I had to make PDFs and then bring them in. There's, for those of you who have done things like this, you can write in separate chapters for example, and then include that into a document without having any preamble and just for organizational purposes. But I couldn't even do that because of these problems with it being having a separate author and to do the titles and the abstracts and all that kind of stuff. So I had to make PDFs and I had to bring them in. There's another package that I really want to use and I cannot for the life of me figure out how to do. But it's the combine package, because it automatically creates a table of contents, which I showed you here. I have to manually make this. it automatically makes the table of contents, but I could not figure out how to get that to work, and that would make things so much easier in terms of how I'm doing this. But so that's my next project, and maybe somebody has some insight on that and can help me out with it. But PDF Pages is working sufficiently well for now. It gets a little bit clumsy, and I can explain why it's clumsy in a little bit. Basically, the biggest challenge is setting page numbers. Every time I make a change, I have to go set a page number each individual file, but that'll be another video. CS quotes really helps with things like block quotes. So if you have a quotation that's 40 words or longer, you want to sort of indent it from the left-hand margin. And a block, that's what a block quote is according to APA convention. And this helps out with a little bit of that. I haven't really done a whole lot of that, but it's in here sort of handy for me if I need to. I technically don't really need to have it in this preamble. It's probably more important for each individual article, but I leave it here as a reminder to myself that you should do this, make this a thing. And then the second package here, this BibLatex package is what I use for reference management. So probably be a separate video. There's tons of information on BibLatex and how to use it and what it's for. This I'll probably actually make a special tutorial for the authors of people that are writing for the journal so they can learn how to use it. Because I've found that in my own writing, this has made my referencing so much faster. It's so much nicer to use this. Once I figured out how to use it, I can write so much faster and more efficiently than I used to before, when I had to sort of go back and find references and copy and paste them and go to the internet and get stuff and all that. And it's just a mess. So that's what I use for this. The HyperRef package allows hyperlinks to be possible. So one of the nice things with that is that we don't print journals anymore unless somebody really wants one and they want to pay extra for it. It's sort of becoming, I don't know that many people that still send physical copies to their subscribers unless they request it or unless they want that and want to pay for the printing fees. It's not just a save the environment thing, although there's that added benefit, but it's more a matter of, for me anyway, I love the flexibility of having an interactive document online, since that's how we're delivering it to people anyway. So the HyperRef package can not only hyperlink to external documents or external web pages, which, for example, if in your references you have DOI numbers that DOI being the digital object identifier, that's the thing, that's the place on the internet that document lives, and you can just link right to that. So gone are the days when I have to look through the reference list and then go to Google and put it in and then see if I can find it and then have access through my academic institution to actually get that article in the first place. But now I can just click and it goes there. And also I can hyperlink things like if there's a citation in the document, it can hyperlink to the reference list to find out more information about it. So it makes navigating documents and checking sources and sort of fact checking scientific stuff a lot more easy and just nicer to do. So HyperRef is something that I think is kind of essential almost. You don't really need it, but it's really, really nice to have, and it's super easy to use too. So there's that. This declare language mapping, I frankly have no idea what that means, except that somebody did it in a different tutorial that I saw, and I made a decision at some point to put it in there. It could be entirely not necessary, but I think it has something to do with this document class. I could be wrong about that, but I'm not really sure. So somebody will tell me in the comments if that's not true. But that's the fun thing about doing this kind of stuff, is that you go onto some wiki online, or you go to Stack Exchange or whatever it is, and you find out snippets from other people of how they do things, and sometimes you include them, and sometimes you know everything that they're doing exactly, and other times you don't. There's part of the complicated nature of LaTeX is there's packages and dependencies, and how you have to include certain things if you're going to use this one, and so this is something that was in there, and I'm kind of afraid to move it at this point. I'll do that probably in the next journal. I'll try it out, get rid of it, and see if anything changes or I lose something important. But so that's there, and I have no idea why. But if you're like me and you feel kind of embarrassed about having stuff in here that you don't fully understand, don't worry about it. This is just part of the game. Um, this whole section right here, the reason there's a space here is because these are all related. So fancy HDR, let me pull up, pull up my PDF again that I had up here. So fancy HDR handles all of this stuff up here in the headings. It handles spacing issues along the sides like margins, and also what's in your footer. So your heading and your footer, as you can see, um, the page style, this is a requirement of fancy HDR. You have to have this command in there. And then I have this changing, the renew command is a way to change the head rule width. And the head rule width is this thing right here. This little line underneath the page number and the journal name and the volume and then issue number. That little line is the head rule width, and you can make it skinnier or thicker if you want to. That's what that's for. It's at 0.4 or whatever. The fancy head, this, it looks like something's missing there. This is sort of weird. It doesn't actually have the command in there. So this is another one of those things that I probably don't need in here. Oh no, actually I do, but why I need it doesn't really matter at this point. But in each individual article, I need to have these commands up there so that it's consistent in all articles what the header and the footer look like. And it's just where the journal name is, the volume and issue number, that changes for every one. I just go in here and change it and then copy and paste it in each individual article that I make. And then the page number, of course. Here, I probably don't need that space here, but I just have it there to separate. This is all the footing. Again, there's a line going across. It's called the rule. That line is set to this same thickness, and there's a little bit of information that the organization had asked me to put in. That's been in other journals too. So that's all just about headings and footers. The fancy HDR package is something that's really common in to use because it really helps with the spacing of things, especially in academics. If you're going to write a thesis or you're working in journals or something like that. These things are just there. I don't even really use them that often, to be honest, but they're just there just in case I need to use international characters or some other stuff. And then graphic X, in this, for sake of example, in here there's some conference related pictures that I'm putting in. Occasionally there are tables or figures or pictures in some articles that I want to have in there. And so graphic X allows me to put in images into each one of the documents. And that's how I do it. And then the spacing comes along and I can do all the spacing and that kind of stuff. So that's a really important, helpful one because then I don't have to necessarily build tables right into the document. It makes it harder to look through the file itself. I can build it separately, compile it, and then put it in there if I need to in a separate way. Or if it's just an ad or something like that. Our journal doesn't have a lot of ad space that we fill up, but we do occasionally, and this helps people send in an ad for, and then I can put it in really easily using graphic X. I'm not going to go through the table of contents, but as you can see, the table of contents here is formatted in a way. This is one of those things that somebody's going to have a better explanation of this, but it's got the name of the author. Of course, I'm the editor, so I have my editor's message in there. And then in most table of contents, you have all those dots that go all the way over to the page number. And I could not figure out how to make a table of contents that worked with the packages that I'm using and that looked the way I wanted it to look without doing this. And this is incredibly clumsy looking and probably kind of embarrassing to say out in public, but this is the only thing I could figure out to do this. But this little L dots thing, that's like the ellipses at the end of a sentence or something, and I just did a whole bunch of those in order to make it look like this. It's not eloquent, it's not pretty, but in the code anyway, but it gets the job done in final form. Again, I've heard there are other packages like the combine package, but I can't figure out how to use them still. I just haven't got that down. And one of the beauties of LaTeX is that if depending on your project, ideally the table of contents would be made for you. That's part of the beauty of it. I've made tables of contents in Word, and that can be kind of a headache to make sure your headings are all right and you have all the stuff in there and all that. So I completely value the automatic table of contents creation that LaTeX is good for, and I can't take advantage of it here for various reasons. So that's why this looks as ugly as it does. And then here are the separate articles that I have in PDF. Now I'm going to show you this. This is my this is what I have, the JLCP editor, that's me. And then I have each individual issue. This one is for last September. And then I have various pieces in here. I have my editorial writing. There's a book review that we did. There's some blank pages that I had to fill in just so that the beginnings of each article started on the right-hand page, and on the left-hand page it's just sort of a suggestion by the publisher to make it more readable and that kind of stuff. And then each individual article that I have in here, those are all here too. This table of contents I never used. That was just for something I was trying out. And what I do is I take each one of these, I compile it, it puts out a PDF, I adjust all the page numbers, and then I go over here and I say, okay, in the folder where I keep the full issue, the one I'm going to send off to the publisher, I drop that PDF from that separate folder into here, and then this one compiles it into the final version of this with all the pages, each article set out exactly how they're supposed to be. And then it makes one final document that I can send off to the publisher. So I don't have to send off individual Word documents. I don't have to tell the publisher exactly what order to put things in. I don't have to put in, send off a list of figures and tables and pictures and tell her, the woman I'm working with, exactly where to put them and all the list of order and all that kind of stuff. Now she doesn't have to worry about any of that. I just have one PDF document. I send it off. She puts on the cover, good to go. End of story. So this is what it looks like. It's a little clumsy, but it works for now. And I think there's probably a more efficient way. But this, once I've learned this system, it saves me a whole bunch of time for the editing process. So I can fiddle around a little bit with this and even put in some learning time and think it's going to save me time in the future. I do the work up front to learn this. And then once I get the system down, which I've pretty much got it down now, I think, for the most part, this is going to save me a ton of time for editing, since it's me and one other woman who does the editing for this. And in fact, I do all the reading and reviewing and sending out for peer review and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking at an article at least 10 times, it seems like, before I send it off for final, for publishing. Get it from the author, make some comments, send it out for review it again, sometimes send it out from a second reviewer, or most of the time send out a second reviewer, review it again, combine comments, send it back to the author, comes back to me, I review it again. So like there's a process for all this stuff. And because I read it so many times, it makes that so much more efficient to see those changes and make those changes. So anyway, that's good enough for now. I'll jump into individual articles and a little bit more of what it takes to do an individual article review in the next one. Okay, see ya.